All right, y'all. We're starting back week 29. We're going to finish up this week. We're going to finish all of chapter on potatoes, grains, and pasta. So let's get going. Share screen. Okay, so we left off last week with this one right here, with making masa from scratch and tamales and stuff like that. So to continue on with grains, let me go ahead and start this. Continue on with grains. We're just going to go through the rest of them. You know, it won't be very long. And then we're going to finish this. The last part of this whole section is pasta. So we're going to finish today with talking about dumplings. And then we'll go through pastas on day 2. And I found this video by Gordon Ramsay that he goes through like 5 different ways to make a pasta and different types of pasta and stuff like that. So, okay. So oats, another type of grain. Most common in the United States is rolled old-fashioned oatmeal. So I put a picture up here of oatmeal, steamed flattened groups, pale brown, round, flake-like, using oatmeal, granola, and baked goods. So I put a picture of a parfait. These are rolled oats right here. Okay, see how they're just like a flattened round thing? That's a rolled oat. Steel cut or Irish or Scotch oats are these right here. Okay, so groats are cut into pieces. They're brown, they're chewy, used in hot cereal and baked goods. These ones tend to get a little more mushy, whereas these tend to last a little bit longer as far as like holding them wise. Both are really good for you. Got carbs, a lot of fiber. It's a really good base for breakfast or even a parfait like this. This is probably like one of my favorite breakfast items. So those are your typical oats. All right, so more grains. Amaranth, that's this one right here. Whole or milled, greens can be eaten in amaranth. It's got a sweet flavor and it's used for hot and cold cereals, peel-off salads. It's usually kind of got a nuttier flavor to it as well. So people will cook this off, add it to like a tabbouleh, or, you know, if you're doing like a 7-grain rice, something like that. Oh, excuse me. Okay, barley, whole and bran removed, makes grits or flour, like barley flour, used in peel-off soup, salads. And this is the main ingredient to make beer in a lot of whiskeys. So like hops and barley, that's where it gets its flavors. Buckwheat, whole or milled, nutty flavor. Buckwheat pancakes are really, really good. Blinis, baked goods, peel-offs. I really like buckwheat pancakes. Those are probably one of the better ones to try if you want to try a different type. They're sweeter and have a really good flavor. Kasha, whole crushed kernels, reddish brown, nutty flavor. They all kind of have the same nutty flavor. Millet, used in hot cereals and peel-offs. And then quinoa, this is called the ancient grain. It's one of the ancient grains. Whole or milled, tiny off-white, used in peel-off salads, puddings, or soups. This has a completely different texture than most things that you might have had. The thing with quinoa is it's gluten-free. It's extremely high in protein, and it's one of the few plants that contains sufficient amounts of all 9 essential amino acids. So it contains all 9 essential amino acids, which is very unusual for one item. High in fiber, magnesium, B vitamins, iron, potassium, vitamin E. It has a lot of good components to it, whereas a lot of these different other grains have 1 or 2, or it's good for something in particular, but quinoa is probably one of the highest. And as far as protein goes, this is a really good substitute for vegetarians. So quinoa, 9 essential amino acids. Keep going with this. We have rye, which it's whole, cracked, or milled, light to dark brown. Pumpernickel flour is actually coarsely ground rye and then used in peel-off salads. So this is a picture of rye bread. So you have light and dark rye. If you've ever seen marble rye, that's just a mixture of the two. So they make 2 separate doughs, roll them up, slice it, or roll it up, bake it, and that's where you get the marble color. And then I put this picture of a corned beef Reuben on here because that's typically a rye bread that they use that with. Rye bread's hands down my favorite bread ever of all time. I love rye flour. Can't eat a whole lot of it, but rye toast is probably like my all-time favorite go-to. Okay, sorghum, boiled into thick syrup, used in porridge, flatbreads, beer, and syrup right here. I think it gets like a high sugary content flavor. I don't know, but you'll see it. Sorghum's used, sorghum flour is used in a lot of gluten-free items as well. Okay, spelt, which is this, whole or milled, nutty flavor, once again. And it actually has wheat allergies to it. So spelt, I think, must be in the wheat family. These are grains you see, like I've seen a rye bread used a lot, or rye flour. These other ones, sorghum and spelt, are a lot of things that in commercial and industrial facilities will use as substitutes for certain things. It's not something specific to a restaurant where you'd be like, oh, I'm going to go buy some sorghum and use that instead of serving rice tonight. Like, it's not items that you're going to use all that often. You'll see these in a lot of cereal grains, stuff like that. They're good filler items, and they all have these components to them that are perfect for different essential things. So, like I said, sorghum's used for a lot of gluten-free breads. And it probably has a really good texture to it, or it has a good binding component. So that's why these things are all in here as well. Okay, as far as storing your stuff, I'll put a picture of a dry storage area in here. So a lot of these things will come in fresh, canned, dried, or frozen. Packaging, when you check it in, make sure the packaging is intact. I think there's a picture of one here. I put a picture of a rat. But if you see this is where something's been chewed on, okay? And this is a rat, not a mouse. You can tell by the shape of its head. And these things will get in anywhere. But anywho, back to this part. Packaging is intact. It's not leaking anywhere. If you get a bag of flour and there's flour all over it, don't take it. Store it in a cool, dry place with a lot of ventilation. And you really don't want any windows in there either, because sunlight coming through can damage a lot of things. No excessive heat, and anything moldy, damp, wrinkled, just discard it. And then store for 1 to 2 years, best within 6 months. You never want to keep anything past a year, like canned goods. If you're not using them that quick, come up with a special. I mean, this is going back to restaurants, but even at your house, like, go through your canned goods. If there's stuff in there you're not eating, just get rid of it. Otherwise, say if somebody drops it accidentally after you bought it, somebody knocks it off the shelf, it gets a dent in it, they get really toxic. If they get a dent, it starts getting air in it, you get botulism. There's just a lot of stuff. So you always want to rotate all your stuff. So don't go buy cans of soup and leave the same cans in the back. You know, use what's in front first. Okay. Whole grains have a shorter shelf life than milled grains because they're less processed. Use within 3 weeks. Inspect grains on delivery. Container should be intact, dry, and clean. Store 6 inches above the ground. Whenever you have anything stored, even at your house, keep it 6 inches off the floor. Okay. Many reasons for this. Even at your home, if somebody spills something, you don't want something on the ground. Okay. Bugs and pests are a lot more likely to get into it if it's close to the floor. So you always want to store everything 6 inches off the floor. Store in a dry, ventilated place. Store whole grains in the freezer. Store brown and wild rice in the refrigerator. All right, preparing legumes. So if you're ready to make your beans, soak and rinse them before cooking them. Okay, cook to develop flavor and remove harmful substances. And then beans should be firm to the bite. They should not be mushy. Soaking grains. You guys learned this last week when we did our polenta. So soak grains before you cook them. It'll kind of rehydrate them a little bit. Cook steamed grains in a double boiler. Peel offs include such, and we're going to get to peel offs. And then we saw a video on risotto last week of how to cook it. And you guys, whenever you're cooking any of these grains, every single one of them, even the different rices, all have cooking ratios, which means liquid to dry. And the liquid could be anything. It could be everything from white wine to water. But the quantity will always be different. So like risotto, a lot of those arboreos is a 3-to-1. So it's 3 cups of water to 1 cup of rice. When we did rice a couple weeks ago, we did 2-to-1. When we did polenta last week, we did 4-to-1. So everybody got a 1/4 cup of polenta, and we soaked it in 1 cup of water and then cooked it the next day, and it cooked it all the way through. As far as cooking beans go, you want to soak or cook dried beans. Okay, soaking them does get them, they do rehydrate, but you still need to cook them a little bit to get that full dryness out of it pretty much. So sort out pebbles, debris, or shriveled beans. So what they're suggesting is dump your beans on a tray. A lot of times when they harvest these things, they'll be like, especially lentils, I don't know why, but you'll find rocks, you'll find sticks, you'll find all kinds of stuff in your dried beans. So kind of go through them. Soak dry beans prior to cooking, overnight or a quick soak. I always soak them overnight. And then this says discard the soaking water. A lot of times there could be some toxin type stuff in the water. So put fresh water in there, like don't use the water that you soak them in, and then cook the beans until they're soft. Okay. This is called making a pilaf. We did a pilaf style cooking the other day. With pilaf, you can always cook it 2 ways. You can bake it with the lid on, or you could finish it on the stovetop with the lid on. I prefer to just throw it in the oven just because it's a lot easier and you get that heat all around the product rather than just on the bottom. But on here, you guys saw how we did this. So we did our chicken first, but we had, liquid or oil in the pan. Tossed in, we didn't put onions in there, but we tossed in our rice right here. Add grain and saute till it's well coated. Add the liquid, bring it to a simmer, stir it up. This would be a time, once it simmers, taste the cooking liquid to make sure it tastes good, adjust the seasoning, and then cover it. This says finish it in the stovetop, but we went ahead and finished ours in the oven because it was a lot more consistent and even with the cooking process. But you have to cover it. If you don't cover it, you're going to evaporate all that liquid out and you're just going to have some dry, crunchy rice. It's done when it's tender, and you can tell that usually all the liquid's absorbed, and then you just remove it from the heat, let it sit. All right, making risotto, we watched a video on this. The key to making risotto is make sure you get your liquids down. I even go more. So if it's like a 3-to-1 ratio, like 3 cups of water to 1 cup of rice, have 4 cups of water just in case your pan gets too hot and you boil out a lot of this, because you never cover this rice. This is constantly water added to it. You don't dump 3 cups in there and let it go. So you got to slowly add it. All right. Yeah, and there's that one. Okay, so this one, I found a video on the different types of dumplings. So we're going to start talking about pastas. So dried pasta noodles store well and cook quickly. Staple of American cuisine. Many countries have their own type of pasta and dumpling. Purchase fresh or frozen. Fresh or frozen. And yeah, so I'm going to play this on here. I want you guys to see these different types of dumplings. This is Joey's Shanghai, a place in New York City, and it goes over how they make their dumplings from scratch.
A trip to New York's Chinatown isn't complete without a stop at 9 Pell Street. And even though they've now moved up the block, hundreds of customers walk through the restaurant stores each day for one thing. It's called xiaolong bao, or Chinese soup dumpling. This is Joe's Shanghai, and it's been serving New York's most legendary soup dumplings since 1995.
It's something special. This is the real deal. I've been all over China. I've been to Shanghai. I've had the soup dumplings. I've had everything over there, and Joe's really matches the flavor. It's amazing.
We're on Pell Street in Chinatown today, and we're heading to one of the most iconic restaurants in this part of the city. Joe's Shanghai is almost always packed with people coming to try their soup dumplings, but they're not the only place to do soup dumplings and to do them well. So why are so many people coming here? Well, that's what we're here to find out.
Soup dumplings are a staple dish in Chinese, and in particular, Shanghainese cuisine, thought to be invented in the late 1800s. They are made using a very thin dumpling skin that's rolled out and flattened into small circles. Joe's owner and chef, Joe C., keeps his recipe for the filling a secret, but typically the soup starts as a gelatinous stock that's cooled and cut into cubes. The cubes are then mixed into a ground pork filling and later placed into the dough. To seal the dumpling properly, each layer of the wrapper must be folded over itself to create a pleat, a skill that looks effortless for Joe but takes many years to master.
What makes a soup dumpling a true soup dumpling?
通常咧一個包咧大概都係26個紋，如果功夫好啲嘅話咧，可以整30個紋。OK， 就包得多咧就靚咯，個品咪靚咯，個包咪靚咯，靚咁你知啦，一睇到咁靚就想食噶啦嘛，係咪？就係咁道理啦。
Finally, the dumplings are steamed in bamboo baskets, which causes the cubes to melt and create a piping hot soup inside.
一日最忙嗰時都賣咗400幾籠㗎，可以。
Countless food publications and famous celebrities have raved about the soup dumplings at Joe's for the last 25 years. Joe learned to make Shanghainese cuisine while training to be a chef in Hong Kong. Following his training, he moved to the US and worked in several New York restaurants.
我嚟嗰時都係幫人打工，打工嗰時呢度都未有小籠包嘅。OK， 咁後尾一路打工一路儲啲錢啊，咁啊諗下整啲新嘢出嚟啦，咁啊諗到個小籠包咯。
Joe opened his first restaurant in 1995 in Flushing, Queens. His iconic location on Pell Street in Chinatown came just a year later. But for Americans eating it for the first time, it was no easy feat.
一開頭咧佢哋唔習慣 ，OK， 因為有湯入邊啊嘛，佢哋都唔知道，所以咧食嗰時咧有啲麻煩，成日錄督自己 ，OK， 後尾咧嗰啲中國朋友教佢點樣食咧，佢就變咗好得意，都like interesting 咯，啊，咁啊一個一個介紹，一個一個介紹，咪變咗 popular 咯。
As the popularity of soup dumplings grew, so did the number of customers dining at Joe's. And today, the restaurant is widely credited with popularizing the dish in the city.
What's the takeaway?
Oh, awesome. Yeah, we're getting another round because they're so good.
At Joe's, customers sit at round communal tables awaiting their bamboo baskets filled with 8 pork or crab soup dumplings.
That broth is so delicious. It's savory, it's hot, it's like I have this warm feeling in my body from just slurping that soup. It's also a cold, rainy day, so this is honestly the ideal meal right now.
Though many restaurants now specialize in the dish, Joe's is still considered a rite of passage for those looking to try the quintessential soup dumpling of New York City.
Well, I'm visiting New York for the first time. I'm from Minnesota, and I have a friend who used to live here, and she said this is the best place in all of Manhattan, and if I go anywhere for lunch or dinner, it has to be here.
This is the real deal. I would be happy coming here instead of flying back to China.
All right, so there was one. Being Italian, I was going to do one on ravioli, but I think soup dumplings are like one of the. I've had these before, and I haven't had Joe's, but I love Asian style cuisine. It's probably It's probably my second favorite type of food ever. But yeah, these dumplings are amazing. Or sticky bun. I mean, there's just so many different Asian style dumplings. And everybody has dumplings. Like there's so many different types. There's like pierogies. Gosh, I'm just drawing a blank, but there's just thousands. Like every country pretty much has their own type of dumpling where it's a pasta stuffed with something. But these ones, there's several different videos on these where they go to different cities and like there's one with Emeril Lagasse where he goes to different places and tries the different dumplings, and just what they do to put even the soup broth in there it's amazing. Just like, I don't know, it's the most flavor packed item you'll ever get. So let's keep going. So this next section, we'll probably go over it more tomorrow or day 2. But this starts going through the different types of pastas. So we'll finish up today with the start of the dumpling. And then tomorrow we'll continue on with pastas because there's a lot to go over still with just pasta. All right, well, have a good day, and there'll be some questions waiting.